The frigid Dakota Territory wind howled like a wounded beast as Josephine Keating clutched her wailing infant closer to her chest, tears freezing on her cheeks almost as quickly as they fell. The year was 1876, and the promise of a new life after her husband's death had led her to this desolate spot outside Deadwood, a cruel joke now, as she huddled against the side of an abandoned claim shack, her meager possessions scattered around her. "Hush now, Emma," she whispered, her voice breaking as the tiny girl's cries grew more desperate. "Mama knows you're hungry. Mama knows." But knowing didn't fill Emma's empty belly. The cow's milk Josephine had carefully rationed was gone, the last drops consumed hours earlier. Her own body, weakened by grief and the punishing journey north from Kansas, had stopped producing milk days ago. Emma's wails cut through the night, each cry like a knife to Josephine's heart. 22 years old and already a widow with a 3-month-old child, everything she owned stolen by the driver who'd promised to take them to Deadwood but abandoned them here instead, miles from town. Someone there. A deep voice called from the darkness, causing Josephine to clutch her baby tighter. The silhouette of a man on horseback emerged from the swirling snow. Tall and broad-shouldered, he dismounted with the easy grace of someone who'd spent his life in the saddle. "Madam." He called again, approaching slowly, hands visible at his sides. "You all right out here? Stay back," Josephine warned, though her voice lacked conviction. What could she do against a man's strength? Her husband's pistol had been among the items stolen. The man stopped several paces away. "Name's Samuel Forrester, madam. I'm headed to Deadwood. Heard crying and thought someone might be in trouble." Emma's wails intensified, her tiny face red with effort. "Your little one sounds mighty hungry," he observed, his voice softening. "We've no milk," Josephine admitted, desperation winning over caution. "Everything was stolen. The coach driver left us here yesterday with nothing but what you see." Samuel Forrester stepped closer, and in the dim moonlight breaking through the clouds, Josephine could make out his features, a strong jaw covered with several days' worth of stubble, eyes that crinkled at the corners, and a mouth set in a concerned line. He couldn't have been more than 30. Without hesitation, he shrugged out of his heavy buffalo coat and held it out to her. "Take this, madam. That shawl ain't near enough for you and the baby in this weather." "I couldn't possibly, I insist," he said firmly, draping the coat around her shoulders. The residual warmth from his body enveloped her like an embrace. "I'll help find work for you in Deadwood. Can't leave a mother and child out here to freeze." Emma continued to cry, her little body trembling against Josephine. "How long since she's eaten?" Samuel asked, kneeling to gather Josephine's scattered belongings. "Hours. My milk. It's gone," she admitted, shame coloring her voice. "I had cow's milk, but it's finished." Samuel nodded thoughtfully. "My sister had the same trouble with her first. There's a woman in Deadwood, a wet nurse, Mrs. Parker. Lost her own baby last month but still has milk. She might help until we get you settled." "We have no money to pay anyone," Josephine said, her voice breaking. "My husband died in Topeka. The claim papers he left are worthless now." Samuel secured her belongings to his saddle. "Money ain't everything in these parts, madam. Folks help each other. It's how we survive." He held out his hand. "Deadwood's 5 miles north. My horse can carry us both." Josephine hesitated, years of proper upbringing warring with their desperate circumstances. Emma's cries decided for her. She placed her hand in Samuel's, feeling the calluses of a working man's grip. "I'm Josephine Keating," she said as he helped her to her feet, "and this is Emma. Pleased to meet you both, Mrs. Keating, though I wish it were under better circumstances." In one smooth motion, Samuel lifted Josephine and Emma onto his horse before mounting behind them. He wrapped one strong arm around Josephine's waist, keeping her and Emma secure against him as he took the reins with his free hand. "Lean back if you need to," he said, his breath warm against her ear. "It's a hard ride to town." As they set off through the snow, Emma's cries gradually softened to whimpers, lulled by the steady rhythm of the horse. Josephine found herself relaxing fractionally into the solid warmth of the stranger behind her. A strange man, yet something in his steady presence and the kindness in his eyes made her trust him. "Why would you help us?" she asked as they rode. "You don't know us." Samuel was quiet for a moment. "My ma and little sister were left stranded once. A stranger helped them when no one else would. I swore if I ever found someone in need, I'd do the same." "Your mother raised a good man, Mr. Forrester." "Sam," he corrected gently, "and I try to be, Mrs. Keating." "Josephine," she returned, surprising herself. The journey to Deadwood was arduous. The wind cut through their clothing despite the shared warmth, and Emma began crying again, her tiny body racked with hunger. When they finally saw the lights of the mining town through the snow, Josephine could have wept with relief. Deadwood in 1876 was a rough-hewn place of opportunity and danger in equal measure. The streets were mud frozen into treacherous ridges, lined with hastily constructed buildings, saloons, and brothels doing the liveliest business, their windows blazing with light even at this late hour. Sam guided his horse toward a modest cabin set apart from the main thoroughfare. Smoke curled from its chimney and a lantern hung by the door. "Mrs. Parker's place," he explained as he helped Josephine dismount, still cradling Emma. "She's a good woman. Husband's a miner with a decent claim." Before they could knock, the door swung open, revealing a stout woman with graying hair twisted into a severe bun. Her expression softened at the sight of the crying baby. "Samuel Forrester, what have you brought to my door in the dead of night?" she asked, though there was no censure in her tone. "Mrs. Parker, this is Mrs. Keating and her daughter Emma. They were abandoned outside town with nothing. The little one hasn't had milk all day." Mrs. Parker's eyes widened. Without another word, she ushered them inside where a fire blazed in the hearth. "Give the child to me," she said, already unlacing her bodice. "Poor little mite sounds half-starved." Josephine hesitated only briefly before placing Emma in the woman's capable arms. Within moments, Emma was nursing hungrily, her desperate cries silenced at last. Josephine's legs gave way and she sank onto a chair, exhaustion washing over her in waves. Sam removed his hat and stood awkwardly by the door. "They'll need a place to stay, Martha," he said. "I thought maybe you knew of somewhere." Mrs. Parker nodded. "The widow Miller's been looking for help since her arthritis got bad. She might take them in exchange for housework." She looked at Josephine. "You can do housework, can't you, girl?" "Yes, madam," Josephine replied. "I can cook, clean, sew whatever's needed." "Good. You can stay here tonight and we'll see Mrs. Miller in the morning." Her expression softened. "Don't you worry about milk for this little one. I've plenty enough for her until you're settled." Tears of gratitude spilled down Josephine's cheeks. "I don't know how to thank you." "No thanks needed," Mrs. Parker replied. "Just pass the kindness along someday." Sam cleared his throat. "I'll leave you ladies to get settled. I'll come by tomorrow to see about getting your things to Mrs. Miller's if that works out." "You're not staying?" Josephine asked, surprising herself with her disappointment. "I've got a room at the boarding house. Been working odd jobs around town while I scout for a homestead claim." He placed his hat back on his head. "Rest well, Mrs. Keating. Emma." He nodded to Mrs. Parker. "Martha." After he left, Martha Parker settled Emma more comfortably in her arms. "Samuel Forrester is a good man," she said. "One of the few in these parts who doesn't spend all his money on whiskey and cards. He gave me his coat," Josephine said softly, looking at the heavy garment still wrapped around her shoulders. Said he'd help find me work. And he will, Martha assured her. Sam keeps his word. Now let's get you fed and into a warm bed. Tomorrow will be soon enough to figure out what comes next. That night, sleeping on a pallet near the fire with Emma finally peaceful beside her, Josephine offered a silent prayer of gratitude for the kindness of strangers and for the tall cowboy with gentle eyes who had saved them from the bitter Dakota night. True to his word, Sam returned the next morning. Josephine was helping Mrs. Parker prepare breakfast, Emma swaddled and sleeping in a makeshift cradle nearby. The smell of coffee and frying salt pork filled the small cabin. "Morning, ladies," Sam said, removing his hat as he entered. He'd shaved, Josephine noticed, and his dark brown hair was neatly combed. "How's the little one today?" "Much improved, thanks to Mrs. Parker," Josephine replied. In the light of day, she could see Sam clearly for the first time. His eyes were a warm hazel, and a small scar bisected his right eyebrow. His clothes were worn but clean denim trousers, a blue cotton shirt, and a leather vest. "I spoke with Mrs. Miller on my way here," Sam said, accepting the cup of coffee Mrs. Parker offered. "She's agreeable to meeting you. Says she needs help with cooking and cleaning and someone to read to her in the evenings. Her eyes aren't what they used to be." "That sounds perfect," Josephine said, hope blossoming. "When can I meet her? She's expecting us after breakfast. It's not far, just 2 streets over." As they ate, Josephine learned more about Samuel Forrester. He'd come to the Dakota Territory 6 months earlier after spending years driving cattle in Texas and Kansas. He was saving to buy land for a horse ranch, breeding stock rather than continuing as a hired hand. "Horses are smarter than cows," he explained with a rare smile, "and they don't try to trample you quite so often." After breakfast, Mrs. Parker insisted on keeping Emma. "No sense dragging the baby out in the cold when she's just gotten warm and fed. You go on and secure your position, then come back for her." Josephine was reluctant to leave her daughter but recognized the wisdom in Mrs. Parker's words. With a promise to return quickly, she followed Sam out into the bright, cold morning. Deadwood bustled with activity despite the early hour. Miners trudged to their claims, merchants opened their stores, and wagons rumbled through the muddy streets. Josephine drew curious glances. Respectable women were still a rarity in the mining town. "Stay close," Sam advised, offering his arm. "Deadwood's not Kansas." "No, it certainly isn't," Josephine agreed, taking his arm. The solid strength of him was reassuring amid the chaos of the frontier town. Mrs. Miller's house was one of the more substantial structures in Deadwood, a 2-story clapboard building with actual glass windows rather than oiled paper. Sam knocked on the front door, which was promptly opened by a tiny woman with snow-white hair and bright blue eyes that belied her evident age. "Samuel Forrester, right on time," she said approvingly. "And you must be Mrs. Keating. Come in, come in." The interior of the house was neat and comfortable, furnished with pieces that had clearly come from somewhere back east. Mrs. Miller led them to a parlor and gestured for them to sit. "Martha Parker sent a note about your situation," Mrs. Miller said without preamble. "Terrible business being abandoned with a baby, but I'm in need and you're in need, so perhaps we can help each other." "I'm willing to work hard, Mrs. Miller," Josephine assured her. "I'm a good cook and housekeeper. And you can read. Your writing is legible." "Yes, madam." "My father insisted all his children be properly educated." Mrs. Miller nodded approvingly. "Good. My son sends letters from San Francisco that I can no longer read myself, and I miss my books terribly." She gestured around the house. "I need help keeping this place in order. My hands won't cooperate anymore, you see." She named a wage that was modest but fair, with room and board included for Josephine and Emma. "There's a small bedroom off the kitchen for you and the baby. It's warm there from the stove." "That sounds wonderful," Josephine said sincerely. "There's one other matter," Mrs. Miller said, her gaze sharp. "I don't abide foolishness or loose morals. If you're to live under my roof, I expect proper behavior." "Of course, Mrs. Miller. I was raised properly." "Good. And what of the father of your child? Any chance he'll come looking for you?" Josephine's throat tightened. "My husband died of typhoid in Topeka 3 months ago. There's only Emma and me now." Mrs. Miller's expression softened. "I'm sorry for your lost child. I know something of widowhood myself." She glanced at Sam. "And you, Mr. Forrester. What's your interest in this arrangement?" Sam shifted uncomfortably. "Just being neighborly, Mrs. Miller. Found Mrs. Keating and her baby in a bad situation and thought to help." Mrs. Miller's knowing look suggested she wasn't entirely convinced, but she let it pass. "When can you start?" "Mrs. Keating." "Today, if that suits you." "Perfect. Mr. Forrester can fetch your things while I show you around the house." By midday, Josephine's few belongings had been moved into the small but clean bedroom off Mrs. Miller's kitchen. Sam had brought Emma from Mrs. Parker's, and the baby now slept peacefully in a drawer padded with blankets, a temporary cradle, until something better could be arranged. "I can't thank you enough, Mr. Forrester," Josephine said as Sam prepared to leave. They stood on Mrs. Miller's back porch, the winter sun casting long shadows across the yard. "It's nothing any decent person wouldn't have done," he insisted. "Nevertheless, you've saved us. I won't forget that." Sam rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture Josephine was coming to recognize as a sign of his discomfort with praise. "I'll check in on you from time to time if that's all right. Make sure you and Emma are settling in." "We'd like that," Josephine said softly. As Sam turned to go, Josephine suddenly remembered something. "Oh, your coat, I still have it." "Keep it for now," he said. "It's still mighty cold and I've another." With a tip of his hat, he was gone, leaving Josephine to wonder at the strange twist of fate that had brought this kind stranger into their lives at their darkest moment. The days fell into a rhythm as January gave way to February. Josephine rose early to start the fires and prepare breakfast before Mrs. Miller woke. The days were filled with cleaning, cooking, and laundry, while evenings were spent reading to her employer from novels and newspapers. Each day, she walked to Mrs. Parker's to feed Emma, gradually extending the time between feedings as the baby began taking thin gruel to supplement. Mrs. Miller proved to be a fair employer and a fount of practical frontier wisdom. She taught Josephine how to stretch meager provisions, which wild plants would be edible come spring, and how to negotiate with the merchants who often tried to overcharge women. "You need to be twice as smart and 3 times as tough out here," Mrs. Miller advised, "especially as a woman alone." Sam came by every few days, sometimes bringing small gifts, a piece of hard candy, a length of ribbon, once even a tiny wooden horse he'd carved himself for Emma. "She's too young for toys," Josephine protested. "She'll grow into it," Sam replied with a shrug. Josephine noticed how gently he handled Emma, how he spoke to the baby as if she understood every word. It was becoming harder to maintain the proper distance that propriety demanded, particularly when she found herself watching for his visits with an eagerness that went beyond simple gratitude. One evening in late February, Sam arrived at Mrs. Miller's door with news. "The stage line's hiring," he told Josephine as they sat in the kitchen, Emma sleeping nearby. Mrs. Miller had already retired for the night. "They need someone to help with meals at the station outside town. The pay's good and you could keep Emma with you." Josephine's heart sank. "Are you saying I should leave Mrs. Miller's?" "No, no," Sam assured her quickly. "The station needs help for the midday meal only when the stage stops to change horses. You could work mornings here, go to the station for a few hours, then return for evening duties." He leaned forward. "It would mean extra money, Josephine, for Emma's future." The use of her first name didn't escape her notice. Somehow, in the weeks since their first meeting, they'd slipped into a familiarity that should have scandalized her but instead felt natural. "You think Mrs. Miller would agree to such an arrangement?" "I already asked her," Sam admitted. "She says, as long as her meals are prepared and the house kept in order, she has no objection to you earning additional money." Josephine considered the opportunity. The wage from Mrs. Miller was enough for their basic needs, but there was nothing left to save. If they ever hoped to have a place of their own again, additional income would be necessary. "How would I get to the station and back? It's outside town, you said." "I'd take you," Sam said. "I'm working at the livery stable now, breaking horses. I can arrange my schedule around it." Josephine studied his face, trying to understand his motivation. "Why are you doing all this, Sam? You've gone well beyond simple neighborliness." Sam was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on his hands. "I told you about my ma and sister, how someone helped them when they needed it." He looked up, meeting her eyes. "What I didn't tell you was that my pa was the one who abandoned them, just up and left one day, never came back. They nearly starved before that stranger helped." "I'm so sorry," Josephine said softly. "Don't be. We were better off without him." He shook his head. "But I guess, seeing you and Emma that night, it reminded me of them, and I thought maybe I could do right by you, even if my pa didn't do right by them." The simple honesty of his explanation touched Josephine deeply. "You're a good man, Samuel Forrester. I try to be." His smile was tentative. "So about the station job, what do you think?" "I think I'd be a fool to refuse it." The stage station job proved to be a blessing. 3 times a week, Sam would arrive at Mrs. Miller's after breakfast, help Josephine secure Emma in a sling across her chest, and drive them to the station in a buggy borrowed from the livery stable. While Josephine prepared and served meals to weary travelers, Sam would work with the horses, changing out the teams and caring for the animals between runs. Emma thrived on the attention from the steady stream of travelers, many of whom were charmed by the sight of a baby on the frontier. Tips were common, and Josephine carefully saved every extra penny. It was during these trips that Josephine and Sam truly began to know each other. In the buggy, away from the watchful eyes of Deadwood's residents, conversation flowed freely. Sam spoke of his dreams for a horse ranch, his years working cattle drives, the beauty of the Dakota landscape beyond the mining camps. Josephine shared memories of her childhood in Missouri, her brief marriage to Thomas, Keating, a kind but sickly man whose dreams of Western riches had died with him in a Topeka boarding house, and her hopes for Emma's future. "I want her to have choices," Josephine explained one April afternoon as they returned to town, the spring thaw turning the roads to mud that slowed their progress. "Not just the choice of which man might marry her, but real choices about her life." Sam nodded thoughtfully. "My sister felt the same. She's a school teacher now in Nebraska. Turned down 3 proposals to keep her independence." "You approve of such independence in women?" Josephine asked, surprised. "I approve of people making their own way according to their abilities," Sam replied. "Man or woman shouldn't matter so much, should it?" Such progressive thinking was unexpected but welcome. Josephine found herself sharing more of her own unconventional views, relieved to find understanding rather than judgment. As spring bloomed across the Dakota Territory, bringing green life to the hills around Deadwood, Josephine became aware of a similar awakening within herself. The crushing grief of widowhood had receded, replaced by a tentative hope for the future, a future in which Samuel Forrester's steady presence featured prominently. She wasn't blind to the way he looked at her when he thought she wouldn't notice, or how his hand sometimes lingered when helping her in and out of the buggy. Propriety demanded a certain distance between them. She was, after all, still in mourning by conventional standards, but the isolation of frontier life made such social niceties seem increasingly irrelevant. Mrs. Miller observed their growing attachment with knowing eyes, but made no comment beyond an occasional raised eyebrow when Sam stayed for supper or brought small gifts for Emma and Josephine. "That young man has intentions," she finally said one evening in late May as she and Josephine sat on the porch after supper, watching the sunset paint the hills gold. Emma, now 8 months old, played on a blanket at their feet, babbling happily. Josephine's cheeks warmed. "Sam's just being kind." HMPH. Mrs. Miller's snort conveyed her disbelief. "Samuel Forrester may be many things, but just kind isn't among them. He's sweet on you, girl. Question is, what do you intend to do about it?" I haven't thought about it," Josephine lied. "Haven't you now?" "Then you're not as sensible as I took you for." Mrs. Miller's gnarled fingers smoothed her skirt. "A widow with a child has few prospects on the frontier, Josephine. Most men want a wife without another man's child to raise." "Emma isn't a burden," Josephine said defensively. "Of course she isn't. But many men would see her that way." Mrs. Miller's voice softened. "Samuel doesn't. He looks at that child like she hung the moon, and he looks at you like you're the sun and stars combined." Josephine bent to pick up Emma, using the movement to hide her flustered expression. "It's too soon. Thomas has been gone less than a year. Too soon by whose reckoning? Society back east." Mrs. Miller waved her hand dismissively. "Out here, time works differently. Life is harder, shorter. You grab happiness where you find it." "Are you suggesting I should encourage him?" "I'm suggesting you should be honest with yourself about what you want." Mrs. Miller rose stiffly. "Now help me inside. These old bones need rest, and you have things to ponder." That night, after Emma was asleep, Josephine sat by the window of their small room, Mrs. Miller's words echoing in her mind. What did she want? Security for Emma, certainly. A home of their own eventually. But beyond those practical concerns, she wanted companionship, partnership, the kind of marriage her parents had shared based on mutual respect and genuine affection. Could she have that with Sam? The question kept her awake far into the night. The opportunity to explore that question came sooner than expected. The following Sunday, Sam appeared at Mrs. Miller's door after church services, dressed in his best clothes, which were still work clothes, but clean and neatly pressed. "Mrs. Miller, I was wondering if I might borrow Mrs. Keating and Emma for the afternoon," he said formally. "There's a spot up in the hills I'd like to show them, now that the weather's fine." Mrs. Miller's eyes twinkled. "I believe I can spare them, Mr. Forrester. Josephine, do fetch Emma's bonnet. The sun's quite strong today." Minutes later, Josephine found herself in Sam's buggy, Emma secured between them, heading out of Deadwood toward the surrounding hills. The May afternoon was perfect warm sunshine, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of pine and wildflowers, the landscape vibrant with new growth. "Where are we going?" Josephine asked as they left the town behind. "There's a meadow up ahead with a view of the whole valley," Sam replied. "Found it while scouting for land. Thought you might like to see it." The meadow, when they reached it, was even more beautiful than Sam had described. Wildflowers carpeted the ground in swathes of yellow, purple, and white. A small stream cut through one corner, its water clear and cold from the mountain snowmelt. And the view, Josephine caught her breath at the sight of the valley below. deadwood reduced to a collection of tiny structures in the distance. Sam spread a blanket under a solitary pine tree at the meadow's edge, and they settled there with Emma, who was delighted by the open space and immediately began crawling toward the nearest patch of flowers. "She's getting fast," Sam observed, watching Emma's determined progress. "Too fast," Josephine agreed with a laugh, retrieving her daughter before she could stuff a handful of blossoms into her mouth. "She'll be walking before we know it." They shared a simple picnic: bread, cheese, apples, and a jar of preserves that Mrs. Miller had insisted they take. Emma, now able to sit unassisted, happily gummed a piece of apple, her chubby face alight with pleasure at this new adventure. As they ate, Sam pointed out landmarks in the distance: the Black Hills rising to the south, the winding path of the creek that fed Deadwood's mining operations, the stage road heading east toward Rapid City. "It's beautiful," Josephine said softly. "I never expected such beauty here." "When we first arrived, all I saw was the harshness." "Dakota's like that," Sam agreed. "Shows you its rough side first, makes you earn the right to see its beauty." He glanced at her, then quickly away. "Some people are like that too, I reckon." "Are you saying I'm harsh, Samuel Forrester?" Josephine teased. His answering smile transformed his face. "No, madam, just that maybe you keep your beauty guarded sometimes, for protection." The observation was startlingly perceptive. Josephine busied herself with wiping Emma's sticky hands to avoid responding immediately. "I brought you out here for a reason, Josephine," Sam said after a moment, his voice serious. She looked up, heart suddenly racing. "Oh," Sam reached into his pocket and withdrew a folded paper which he handed to her. "This came through for me yesterday, the land claim I filed 6 months ago." Josephine unfolded the document, scanning the official language. "You've been granted 160 acres. Sam, that's wonderful." "It's good land," he said, his excitement evident. "About 10 miles west of here. Has a creek running through it, good grazing, even a stand of timber for building. And there's a cabin already, nothing fancy but solid enough to start with." "Your ranch," Josephine said, genuinely happy for him. "Your dream." "Part of it." Sam took a deep breath. "Thing is, Josephine, a ranch isn't just land and horses, it's a home, a family." He met her gaze directly. "I know it hasn't been long since we met and you're still healing from losing your husband, but I hope, you might have come to care for me a little." Josephine's heart pounded so loudly she was certain he must hear it. "Sam, let me finish before I lose my nerve," he said quickly. "I care for you, Josephine, more than I thought possible, and I love Emma like she was my own. I want to build a life with you both if you'll have me." Emma chose that moment to crawl into Sam's lap, babbling a stream of nonsense and patting his face with sticky hands. He laughed, capturing her little hands in his and pressing a kiss to her palm. "See, even Emma approves," he said, eyes crinkling with his smile. Josephine felt tears gathering. "Sam, are you certain?" "Taking on another man's child, a widow with nothing to her name—" "You have everything to your name that matters," Sam interrupted. "Courage, kindness, strength. And as for Emma being another man's child," he looked down at the baby in his lap, who was now contentedly playing with a button on his vest, "she's yours, which makes her precious to me." "I don't know what to say," Josephine whispered. "Say you'll think about it," Sam suggested. "I know it's sudden. I don't expect an answer today, but I wanted you to know where I stand and that there's a place for you and Emma whenever you're ready." Josephine reached out and took his hand. "I'll think about it," she promised. "But Sam, I already care for you too, more than a little." His smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. "That's enough for now," he said softly. They stayed in the meadow until late afternoon, talking of practical matters: how Sam planned to build up his horse herd, improvements needed on the cabin, The income potential of a breeding operation versus breaking horses for sale. Through it all, Emma played between them, occasionally demanding attention but mostly content to explore her new surroundings under their watchful eyes. As they prepared to leave, Sam handed Emma to Josephine and began gathering their picnic things. Watching him move with easy efficiency, Josephine felt a certainty settle over her. This man, this kind, honorable, hardworking man who had rescued them from desperation, was offering them not just security but partnership. A life built together, each contributing their strengths. "Sam," she said suddenly. He looked up from folding the blanket. "Yes, I don't need to think about it," Josephine said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "My answer is yes." Sam froze, the blanket half folded in his hands. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you. Yes, Emma and I will make a home with you on your ranch." She took a deep breath. Yes to all of it. The blanket dropped forgotten as Sam closed the distance between them in 2 long strides. With Emma still in Josephine's arms, he embraced them both, his face alight with joy. "You're sure?" he asked, searching her face. "I'm sure," Josephine confirmed. "Life is uncertain, Sam. The one thing I know is that you've been our blessing from the moment you found us in the snow. I'd be a fool to turn away from that blessing out of fear or convention." Sam's hand came up to cup her cheek gently. "May I kiss you, Josephine Keating?" Instead of answering, she lifted her face to his. Their first kiss was gentle, almost tentative, a promise rather than a passion. When they parted, Emma patted both their faces approvingly, bringing laughter bubbling up between them. "I think she approves," Josephine said. "Smart girl," Sam replied, pressing a kiss to the baby's forehead. "Takes after her mama." The ride back to Deadwood was filled with plans and possibilities. They would marry as soon as arrangements could be made. Neither wanted a long engagement. There was the cabin to prepare, supplies to gather, Mrs. Miller to consider. "I can't leave her without help," Josephine fretted. "She's been so good to us." "We'll find someone to take your place," Sam assured her. "There's a new widow arrived last week with 2 half-grown children. She's looking for a position." "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" Sam's smile was sheepish. "I've had this planned for weeks. Just needed the land claim to come through before I asked." Mrs. Miller received the news of their engagement with smug satisfaction. "About time," she declared. "I was beginning to think you'd both take forever to see what was right in front of you." The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Sam worked tirelessly on the cabin, adding a second room for Emma, reinforcing the roof, and building basic furniture. Josephine continued her duties for Mrs. Miller while gathering household essentials, linens, cookware, tools with her savings from the stage station job. Word of their engagement spread through Deadwood, bringing an unexpected outpouring of generosity from the community. The blacksmith's wife organized a pounding, where each family contributed a pound of staples: flour, sugar, coffee, salt to stock their larder. The mercantile owner offered credit for items they couldn't afford outright. Even the miners pooled resources to gift them a milk cow, delivered to the ranch a week before the wedding. "I told you folks help each other out here," Sam said when Josephine expressed amazement at the community's support. They were married on a perfect June morning in Deadwood's small church, with Mrs. Miller, Mrs. Parker, and half the town in attendance. Josephine wore a simple blue dress rather than traditional white, practical for their journey to the ranch afterward. Emma, now crawling with determination and pulling herself up on furniture, wore a matching blue ribbon in her fair hair and babbled happily throughout the ceremony. The minister was brief but heartfelt in his service. "Marriage on the frontier is not for the faint of heart," he told them. "You will face hardships together that would break lesser bonds, but in that shared struggle, You may find a deeper love than many will ever know." When Sam kissed his bride, the cheers from their assembled friends nearly lifted the church roof. The journey to their ranch, 10 miles of rough track through hills and valleys, took most of the afternoon. By the time the cabin came into view, the sun was beginning its descent toward the western horizon, casting long shadows across their land. Josephine's first glimpse of her new home brought tears to her eyes. The cabin was small but sturdy, with a stone chimney and a covered porch across the front. Someone, Mrs. Miller, she suspected, had hung curtains at the windows and placed pots of wildflowers on the porch steps. Smoke curled from the chimney, indicating that Sam had arranged for a fire to be lit in anticipation of their arrival. Behind the cabin stood a small barn and corral where 3 horses grazed peacefully. The promised creek sparkled in the late afternoon sun, and beyond it stretched open grassland dotted with wildflowers and the occasional stand of trees. To the west, higher hills provided a backdrop of deep green pine forest. "What do you think?" Sam asked, his voice betraying his nervousness as he helped her down from the wagon. Emma, tired from the excitement of the day, slept against Josephine's shoulder. "It's perfect," she whispered, meaning it with all her heart. "It's home." Sam's smile was brilliant. "Welcome home, Mrs. Forrester." He lifted Emma carefully from Josephine's arms, then, in a move that startled a laugh from her, swept Josephine up with his free arm and carried his new family across the threshold of their cabin. Inside, they found more evidence of their friend's thoughtfulness. The table was set for a simple meal, covered dishes keeping warm by the fire. A vase of wildflowers sat at the center, and a crib handmade but sturdy waited in the corner for Emma. "Mrs. Parker said the tradition is to carry the bride over the threshold, but there's nothing in the rules about not carrying the baby too," Sam said as he set them both gently on their feet. "I wanted our first step into our home to be together, all 3 of us." Josephine's heart swelled with love for this man who had saved them from desperation and now offered them a future filled with promise. "I love you, Samuel Forrester. And I love you, Josephine Forrester." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Both of you." Later, with Emma settled in her new crib, they sat on the porch watching the stars appear one by one in the vast Dakota sky. Sam's arm wrapped around Josephine's shoulders, drawing her close against the evening chill. "6 months ago, I thought all was lost," Josephine said softly. "When Thomas died, when the driver abandoned us, when Emma cried through that long night without milk, I couldn't see any path forward. And now," Sam asked, his voice a gentle rumble against her ear, "now I see everything." She looked up at him, this man who had become her unexpected salvation. A home, a family, a future. Sam's kiss was tender, a promise sealed beneath the watching stars. "That night when I heard Emma crying, I was just trying to help a mother and child in trouble," he murmured against her lips. "I never imagined I was finding my heart." "Perhaps some things are meant to be," Josephine suggested. "Perhaps the universe brings together those who need each other most." Sam's answering smile was thoughtful. "I like that idea, that even in our darkest moments, something better is already on its way to us." They sat in companionable silence for a time, watching the moon rise over their land, their future. "What are you thinking?" Sam finally asked. Josephine smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "I'm thinking that Emma's cries that night weren't just hunger. They were calling you to us. Our guardian angel in a cowboy hat." Sam's laughter rumbled through his chest. "Not much of an angel, but I'll spend my life trying to be worthy of that faith." "You already are," Josephine assured him. "You already are." 10 years later, the Forrester Ranch had become one of the most successful horse breeding operations in the Dakota Territory. The original cabin had been expanded to a comfortable home, with a proper kitchen, 3 bedrooms, and a parlor where Josephine taught their children their letters and numbers. Emma, now a spirited 10-year-old with her mother's determination and her adoptive father's love of horses, had been joined by 2 brothers, 7-year-old Thomas, named for the father he would never know, and 4-year-old James, who had his father's hazel eyes and easy smile. On a warm summer evening much like the one a decade earlier, Sam and Josephine sat on their expanded porch, watching their children chase fireflies in the gathering dusk. "Did I ever tell you," Sam said, his hand finding Josephine's as naturally as breathing, "that the night I found you and Emma, I'd been ready to give up on Deadwood? I was planning to head back to Kansas the next day. Thought the Dakota Territory wasn't for me after all." Josephine turned to him in surprise. "No, you never mentioned that. What changed your mind?" Sam's gaze was warm as he looked at his family, Emma showing her brothers how to cup their hands gently around the glowing insects before releasing them, the boys' faces alight with wonder. "A baby's cry in the darkness," he said simply, "and her mother's courage in the face of impossible odds." Josephine squeezed his hand. "We found each other when we needed each other most, and every day since has been a blessing because of it." As night deepened around their home, Samuel and Josephine Forrester sat together, surrounded by the life they had built from desperate beginnings, a testament to the power of kindness offered without expectation, and love found in the most unlikely circumstances. Across the years, Josephine could still hear the echo of Emma's hungry cries on that cold January night, and Sam's steady voice offering his coat and a promise of help. What had seemed like her darkest hour had in fact been the beginning of her greatest joy, a truth she carried in her heart through all the seasons of their life together on the Dakota frontier.